The day started like any other, but the moment she showed up, everything exploded. Karen stood at the edge of my driveway, clipboard in hand, her face red like she was ready to scream at the world. "You can't do this here. This land belongs to the community, not you," she shouted. I blinked, staring at the enormous sign she had planted in my yard, which read, "Violation of community spirit. Immediate action required." My blood boiled. This was my land. My family had lived here for generations. Before I could even reply, she whipped out her phone and yelled, "I'm calling the police, arrest him." I froze. Right there on my own land, a stranger with fake authority was trying to take control. But I didn't panic. I had my reasons. My wife whispered from behind me, calm but tense. "Remember, we've dealt with worse than this. Just stay cool." Karen's fury didn't stop. She shoved a paper under my nose. "This HOA notice says you're endangering the community. Tear it down or I swear they'll remove you from your house." Her smugness was unbearable. People like her thrived. On power, on fear, on pretending the rules applied to everyone else but not them. I took a slow breath, pretending to be intimidated while secretly planning my move. My hand brushed the small pocket under my jacket where I kept proof. Property deeds, security footage, and a card I rarely showed anyone. My credentials as a former military officer with legal training. You don't know who you're dealing with," I said quietly, letting her arrogance make her think she had already won. And then she did something worse. She stepped closer, gesturing wildly. "I will make sure this land is taken. From you. You'll regret this." But I noticed her hesitation, the tiny twitch in her left eye. She was bluffing. Big time. A car door slammed behind us and my teenage son peeked out, holding my phone like he knew exactly what I had planned. "Dad, I started recording," he said, smirking. That tiny moment of defiance made me feel invincible. Karen glanced around, realizing someone else was watching. "Get off my property," she screamed, but now the attention had shifted. Neighbors were peeking from their windows, whispering. She had underestimated not just me, but the entire street. And then she did the unthinkable. She pulled out her phone again and shouted, "This is the sheriff, come quick." My heart skipped a beat for just a second, before I calmly stepped forward and said, "Funny thing, I'm the real sheriff in this county." Her jaw dropped, and that's when I knew this battle was about to get personal and messy. Karen froze, her phone trembling in her hand as the words sank in. You can't be," she stammered, glancing at the security cameras mounted on my porch. I could almost hear her brain spinning, trying to process that the fake authority she was wielding had just met the real deal. Before she could recover, I motioned to my wife, who stepped forward with a calm, deadly precision. "Do you really want to keep pushing this?" she said, her voice low. Behind her, my son kept recording, zooming in on Karen's every twitch. The neighborhood had gathered, quietly, but their eyes were hungry for drama. Karen tried to regain control. "I have signatures. This community will not stand for your behavior," she shouted, waving her clipboard like a weapon. But as she did, I held up my own stack of papers, the real deeds proving my ownership. "Funny," I said, letting a small smirk escape. "I checked. All perfectly legal. Looks like your signatures don't mean a thing here." Her face turned bright red. She realized her bluff wasn't just exposed. It was being broadcast to the entire block. That's when she made her next mistake. She stormed toward my fence, trying to rip down the HOA sign. I calmly stepped in front of her, letting her momentum fling her forward just enough to stumble into the garden gnome I had placed there, an old army relic my father left me. She yelped and tripped, knocking over the sign herself. The crowd gasped, but I stayed silent, letting the moment sink in. Then she tried the nuclear option, dialing again, yelling for backup. But my phone rang at the exact same time. My old colleague from the county office was on the line. "We saw your posts online," he said, "and we're sending legal verification immediately." I nodded at my son, who grinned, pressing record harder. Every move Karen made was being documented, every overreaction captured. And just as she caught her breath trying to figure out her next move, a truck pulled into the driveway behind her. 2 uniformed officers stepped out. Karen's face lit up with triumph, thinking she had finally won, until the officers walked straight past her and saluted me. "Sir, everything seems in order," one said, pointing at my property. Karen's eyes went wide as saucers. The neighborhood erupted into whispers. She had underestimated me, underestimated my family, and underestimated the power hidden behind our calm. And as she stood there, frozen, I knew this was just the beginning. The battle for my land, and my family's honor, was about to get even darker. Karen's face twisted with rage, but now her fear was creeping in. She pulled out another phone, frantically typing messages, muttering, "They can't just ignore me. They can't." Her hands shook as she realized every move she'd tried had failed, and the neighborhood was watching. Every neighbor who had once been polite was now leaning out their windows, murmuring, taking mental notes. Without warning, she stormed to my car and tried to block me from leaving, slamming her body against the hood. "You're not going anywhere. This is my community. You'll pay," she screamed. My son stepped forward, holding his phone in front of her. "You want everyone to see you're crazy?" he asked. Karen hesitated, realizing that anything she did now would be recorded, and likely viral. Then came the first shocking injustice moment, her final gamble. She ran to her car and, in a bold move, called a tow truck, claiming my car was parked illegally on community property. Within minutes, the truck appeared, and the driver, confused but following the supposed HOA orders, hooked my car. I ran forward, shouting, but the driver ignored me. My wife's eyes flashed, and I knew we couldn't just react. We had to strike smart. I pulled out the proof, the GPS land survey, my ownership documents, and the county records, while my son kept filming. "This truck isn't taking my car anywhere," I said firmly, showing the driver the paperwork. The tow driver's eyes widened, muttering, "Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't realize." Karen screamed from the distance, "This isn't over. I'll have you arrested." But just then, my phone buzzed. The county office had sent a live verification to my phone, confirming my ownership and exposing Karen's falsified HOA orders. I showed it to the driver, who immediately unclipped my car. Karen's screams turned into stammers. Her authority had crumbled in seconds. And then the twist hit even harder. As she tried to flee, a neighbor stepped forward, holding a video they had secretly taken earlier, proof of her planting fake signs on other people's lawns. Suddenly, it wasn't just me. Karen's entire charade was collapsing in real time, her power exposed to the whole street. I took a deep breath, letting her panic sink in, and whispered to my family, "This is only the start. She just made the first mistake that will cost her everything." Karen's panic turned into reckless desperation. She started shouting to anyone who would listen, claiming I had threatened her and that the HOA would have me arrested for trespassing. But the neighborhood had already seen everything. The tripping, the fake signs, the attempted towing. Their whispers turned into murmurs of disbelief. Then came her boldest move yet. She stormed into the street, waving a fake badge she had printed, herself yelling, "I am law enforcement, you must comply." For a second, a few neighbors flinched, unsure, but I stayed calm. My wife stepped forward, her hand resting on the small case at her side. "Funny thing," she said quietly. "We know how to deal with people impersonating cops." That's when I revealed our hidden advantage, footage from a hidden security camera I had installed months earlier, aimed directly at the entrance to the property. It captured Karen going door to door, planting fake notices and claiming she had authority to control everyone's land. I held up my tablet and pressed play. The crowd gasped as they watched her lie, her voice dripping with entitlement. Karen's face turned pale, realizing she had just walked into a trap she didn't see coming. Her screams grew louder. "That's not real. Delete it." But it was too late. Every neighbor was watching, some recording, others whispering to friends who were already calling local news. The power had shifted. What started as her attempt to intimidate me had now backfired spectacularly, and just when she thought she could flee, my son pointed to the mailbox. Another twist. Karen had left her personal documents on top of it, thinking no one would notice. Among them were signed petitions that contradicted her claims, exposing not just the lies about me, but about her entire fake HOA authority. I grabbed the papers calmly, holding them up for everyone to see. By the time Karen realized the tide had turned, her entire image was shattered. The neighbors' murmurs turned into open ridicule. She had underestimated us, our preparation, our patience, and our willingness to fight smart. I looked at my family, their eyes steady, and whispered, "This is where the lesson begins. You don't mess with land, law, or family, especially not ours." Karen, realizing her fake badges and notices weren't enough, escalated to her next desperate move, calling the real authorities. She spun her phone around, yelling into it, "Yes, dispatch! There's a trespasser on community land and he refuses to comply." Her voice cracked with panic, but she tried to sound confident. I stayed calm, my hand brushing the pocket where my old sheriff badge and service papers rested. "Funny," I said. "You're about to call the wrong people on the wrong family." My son kept recording, zooming in on Karen's shaking hands. The tension in the street was palpable. Neighbors peeked from windows and doors, some whispering, some preparing to intervene if it went too far. Minutes later, lights flashed down the street. 2 squad cars pulled up. Karen's eyes lit up with relief, thinking her nightmare was about to end with my arrest. But as the officers stepped out, they approached me first. One of them saluted. "Sir, the dispatch confirmed everything. Your land ownership, property boundaries, and legal rights. The complaint is invalid." Karen froze. That can't be," she shouted, but the officers ignored her, turning instead to verify my documents. Her panic grew, and in that moment she tripped over the edge of my driveway, sprawling into the gravel. A neighbor laughed quietly. The humiliation was public, undeniable. Then came the second twist. My wife, quietly calm the entire time, handed the lead officer a folder of evidence. The footage of Karen's fake notices, the documents she had left on my mailbox, and her multiple false claims. "We also recorded her threatening behavior," she said. The officer nodded gravely, flipping through the evidence. Karen's protests turned to shrill screams as the officers gently but firmly escorted her to the squad car. Her final attempt at authority evaporated in front of the entire neighborhood. I looked around. The crowd's whispers were now open praise, eyes wide with amazement. I finally let out a slow breath, the tension leaving my shoulders. "Sometimes," I said quietly to my family, "justice doesn't need to fight. It just waits." My son smiled, still recording, knowing this would be a story people wouldn't believe without proof. Within hours, the video my son recorded went viral in the neighborhood and quickly online. People shared clips of Karen tripping over the driveway, yelling fake orders, and being escorted by the officers. Comments poured in, neighbors, strangers, even local news outlets. The HOA's so-called authority crumbled under the weight of public exposure. Karen tried to regain control, posting angry messages on social media, claiming she was defamed and that I was harassing her. But every post was met with screenshots of her own lies, her fake notices, the petitions she'd forged, and footage of her threatening behavior. The narrative had completely flipped. Now she looked like a desperate bully, not an enforcer of any law. Meanwhile, life on my property returned to normal, but we stayed vigilant. My wife reviewed security footage from every angle, ensuring no further attacks could take us by surprise. Our neighbors, who had once feared Karen's wrath, now came over, offering support, sharing stories, and even laughing together about the ordeal. It was a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. The HOA, embarrassed and exposed, issued an official statement, one that was carefully worded to avoid admitting fault, but it was meaningless. Everyone knew who had won, and for the first time in months, I felt the full weight of peace settle over our land. My son lowered his phone, still recording, and grinned. "We got her good," he said, and then came the final emotional twist. Karen tried to sue, claiming emotional distress, but the evidence we collected, legal deeds, security footage, officers' reports, and her own actions, ensured her case collapsed before it even began. Justice wasn't just served. It was undeniable, public, and complete. I stood on my porch looking over our land, feeling a deep sense of pride. "I didn't fight for this country to have strangers dictate my life," I whispered. My family joined me, hands on shoulders, knowing we had not only defended our home but exposed corruption. protected our neighbors, and reminded everyone that law, truth, and courage matter more than fake authority. Karen's final attempts at control were pathetic. She tried to return to the neighborhood a week later, carrying new notices and a stack of threatening letters. But no one opened their doors. Neighbors had seen enough. Her reputation was ruined. Every glance from the street met with silent judgment. I walked out to meet her, calm but firm. "This ends now," I said. "You don't belong here. Your authority is gone." Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth to argue. But the local HOA board, now under pressure from the community and my legal proof, had officially revoked her powers. Karen's face drained of color. Then came the ultimate twist. Someone in the neighborhood uploaded a compiled video of her entire spree. Fake notices, false claims, threats, and her dramatic failures. It went viral, catching the attention of local news and even authorities in neighboring counties. Karen wasn't just a local embarrassment anymore, she was infamous. With the HOA dismantled, the street returned to normal. Families walked freely, neighbors smiled again, and children played safely. My wife and I finally relaxed, watching our son ride his bike across the driveway we had fought so fiercely to protect. As I looked over our land, I realized the battle had been about more than property. It was about respect, truth, and standing up against corruption. I smiled quietly, thinking, this is why we fight. This is why we protect what's ours. Even in the aftermath, the lesson lingered. People who misuse power crumble when faced with courage, preparation, and truth. And for our family, the victory wasn't just legal. It was emotional, moral, and absolute. The weeks that followed were quiet but filled with a deep sense of victory. Every time I stepped onto the porch, I felt the weight of what we had protected. Not just our land, but our family, our neighbors, and the principle that no one can bully their way into control. My son ran past, laughing, waving at neighbors who now smiled freely, no longer hiding behind closed doors. Karen never returned. Her social media presence dwindled as the evidence of her lies spread further, and even her attempts at legal action had failed miserably. The HOA board, humiliated and dismantled, issued formal apologies to the residents, and policies were rewritten to prevent anyone like her from rising to power again. The community felt lighter, safer, and more united than ever. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I stood with my family looking out over our land. My wife put her hand on my shoulder. "We did it," she said softly, and I nodded, feeling the truth of it deep in my chest. Every threat, every fake notice, every scream had led to this moment. Justice wasn't just served, it was witnessed, undeniable, and lasting. I thought about the lesson for the future: courage, preparation, and standing up for what's right can topple even the loudest, most entitled bullies. And while the struggle had been intense, the emotional victory, seeing our neighbors safe, our home secure, and truth prevailing, was more satisfying than any legal win alone. As darkness fell, the lights of the neighborhood flickered on one by one, a symbol of resilience. I whispered to my family, "We didn't just protect our home. We reminded everyone that freedom, truth, and honor matter." My wife smiled. My son waved at the street, and for the first time in weeks, the world felt simple, safe, and ours. The story ended not with chaos, but with quiet triumph, a victory built on courage, evidence, and the unshakable bond of family defending what was theirs.